Seeing as there's a new Pokemon game coming out soon, let's start off with a Pokemon question.
Okay then.
What is your favourite evolution?
Oh, Vaporeon. If you don't agree with that, you can fuck off. Come at me. Brock Harrison, yes, that character does have a last name. He's one of the most popular and enduring characters from the Pokemon series. Weirdly though, the character was temporarily written out of the show when producers realised that maybe the character might come across as massively racist in the West.
First of all, let's just get this out there.
Okay.
Brock is awesome.
Brock is awesome.
Brock
yeah.
is amazing.
I love that character. He's my favourite one in the entire show because he's so pragmatic. Who else but Brock could turn a frying pan into a frying pan? It's such a good line.
It's the best line ever.
It's so good.
It's the fact that clearly there was someone who was doing the translation.
And they were like, yeah. They were rubbing their knees when they thought of that line. I'm going to fucking get this one. I'm going to get paid for writing this line.
Hey, I know. I'll use my trusty frying pan as a drying pan.
So why do the producers think that Brock might be perceived as being racist?
Well, according to a storyboard editor for the first season called Masamitsu Hidaka, when the show first started gaining traction in the West, producers started to worry that the character of Brock might be perceived as racist due to his eyes. Or lack thereof, I guess, because he doesn't really fucking have any, does he? Except for that one episode where he opens them and he doesn't fire hyper beams.
Blah, 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 blah. Ooh, oh, 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 oh. Yee,
Have you heard this theory?
What's the theory?
There's one episode of the Pokemon anime where it's real that Snorlax fires hyper beams out of its eyes.
Hyper
Horn drill.
And there's a joke on the internet, that's why Snorlax never opens its eyes. And the thing is that why Brock never opens his eyes? If he did, he'd fire hyper beams out of them constantly.
So Brock is Cyclops?
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's controlling his own power. Now I think about it, that's a weirdly specific trope in a lot of cartoons, isn't it? It's like a character who has like a part of their anatomy you just never see. Like the parents in Cow and Chicken, where they're just like, you only ever see their legs. And then in one episode it reveals they are just sentient walking legs, which is fucking brilliant.
Well, the most famous example is Kenny in South Park.
Oh yeah, well you never see his face.
Yeah, originally you're never supposed to see his face.
Yeah, and I like the joke that like Matt Stone and Trey Parker came up with that when they finally reveal what Kenny looks like in the South Park movie, which I think they censored in some of the trailers. That's like one of the draw points. Like you finally get to see Kenny without his trademark Parker. He just looks like an average kid.
Yeah, there's nothing special about him.
He looks so normal.
Goodbye, you guys.
Looking back at Brock's face now in 2018 as an adult,
Yeah.
I guess I can...
You can kind of see
I can see where they were coming from.
Someone somewhere might have looked at that and gone, maybe just tone that down a little bit. And if you're someone out there who doesn't see why having a character with literal slants for eyes might be a bit racist, here's Father Ted explaining why that is the case. For everyone else out there, before you start to roll your eyes at the idea of an overly sensitive executive censoring something before it even got complained about, remember that this is before Pokemon took off in the West, and the producers were very mindful of the fact not everything in the show would translate to a foreign audience.
There's quite a few examples of that, like the rice jelly donuts thing.
Yeah, that's one that confused a lot of people where, like, if you've not seen the Pokemon anime, at various points in it, Brock refers to what is very clearly not a donut as a jelly donut, because it's obviously... In the original anime, it's a Japanese rice cake, I believe, but they don't have them in the West, so they just call it a fucking donut.
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
And I remember being a kid, like, that's the weirdest looking donut I've ever seen. I was like, I always thought it was a snowball.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like not Tunnocks tea cakes, the Tunnocks snowballs that you used to get, where you pack lunch? I always thought it was one of them. I was like, yeah, 'cause they have, like, the mallow inside and the jam. Maybe it's just, that's what Americans called a donut. I wondered about that for the longest time until I was an adult and found out, no, it's just, like, you know, it's a Japanese show and they didn't think, like, American kids would know what the fuck a rice cake was. I was like, oh, okay.
But the idea of the executives being really cautious in that first season, if you go through that episode list, there are a lot of missing episodes or ones that have been heavily edited.
There are, and we've talked about one before, and that's the one that nearly killed some fucking kids, and nearly killed the entire show.
Yeah.
Because it caused them all to have seizures. So, like, Brad will link to, like, the episode we talk about below, but in a nutshell, there was an episode that gave a bunch of kids seizures. and it nearly had Pokemon destroyed. It nearly killed the brand in a day.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, there was a precedent there for something that, like, you know, might make, like, you know, headlines killing the fucking show.
Then there's the guns episode.
Yeah, there's an episode where a guy pulls a fucking gun. There's an episode where James has a massive set of tits for no reason.
And the Jinx one was taken for the exact same reason, but I think that one was probably a bit more warranted.
Yeah, the Jinx one, because you look at that and you go, "Ugh." It's like, that's cutting it fine, is that one. The Jinx one, that's bad. It's like, I can see that being like, yeah, maybe change this one. And they did, and that's fine. But the Brock one, which we're talking about today, is the one that always intrigues me because, as I'm about to explain, no one was offended.
So wait, nobody complained about Brock?
Nobody whatsoever. According to that guy I mentioned earlier, the storyboard artist for the first season, nobody in the West, or anywhere in the world for that matter, where Pokemon was aired, ever complained about Brock, his characterization, or the way he looked. The thing is though, producers and executives working on the Pokemon anime didn't realise this until after the decision had already been made to write Brock out of the show and replace him with a tall, non-offensive white guy.
You just got yourself a new traveling buddy.
Huh? Hey, you just can't invite yourself.
How dare you? How dare you say that that wet dishcloth of a person is not offensive?
He was, oh fuck
I
Tracey,
hate
man.
Tracey
He was
so
such a
much.
shit character. And do you know why me and Brad both hated him? Because he wasn't Brock. So I remember when he like, why is Brock gone?
Yeah.
Brock was awesome.
Yeah, why is Brock gone? He's the best one.
He's also as well my favourite fucking character in the games. Like, I love the fact that when you meet Brock for the first time, he's just there. Like that.
Yeah, because he's the first gym leader anyone ever meets when they
and do you
play
know what
through
always gets me?
Pokemon.
He's a guy who just stood there, his shirt off like that, going, fucking bring it, and my 20-foot-long rock snake's gonna slap you. He's effectively slapping you with, like, the metaphorical, like, representation of his own dick. Because, like, his Onyx is unbeatable in that first game. If you were a fan, or, you know, the Pokemon anime, and you wonder, why did Brock leave in the second season? Why is he replaced by this, like, you know, tall glass of fucking room temperature water that they didn't eat? Like, you know how I've described Tracey? It's like, don't you say it's a glass of tepid water? I won't even describe him as that. It's a glass of water that's like 2 degrees more than room temperature. Like, it's the glass of water you leave by your bed when you go to bed drunk, and it's the one where you already took sips out, so that much left. So it's the dregs at the bottom, and you look at it and you just pour it down the toilet. It's like, I do not even want to quench my thirst with this shit. That's what he was. Before we continue, just something I want to put out there and ask the audience. Am I the only one who thought Brock was black?
Well, I always assumed he was black.
Yeah, I always assumed Brock was black because he had darker skin than everyone else. And I always assumed like his hair was a stylized like anime afro. And I found out like, oh, we wrote him out of the show because we thought like, you know, people might perceive like the way he drew his eyes as being like, you know, a negative Asian stereotype. And I never saw it as that, even like as like, you know, older and you get like, you know, okay, I can see why Brock's. I always assumed he was a black dude. When you look at Brock and you see him in the games, I always thought he was just a guy. It's like a stylized version of a guy staring you down, like, you know, the Clint Eastwood squint, which is what I thought he had. Because like they introduced characters in the show, like the one with the gun. The guy who's got the gun, he also has like lines for eyes, and I assumed because that guy was based on Clint Eastwood, and that's why I assumed it was. It's the guy giving you like, you know, the high noon stare down, but it's just a stylized representation of that. Because that's the way I always interpreted, like, you know, Brock's design. Because that very first time you meet him, he's a guy stood away from you, staring you the fuck down. And he's like, oh shit, this guy's got like an army of rock monsters. He's gonna fuck me up. To bring this all back around to what we were talking about before, everyone in that show has a stylized, like, you know, iconic design, except for Tracey. Fuck that guy. He's so boring. What's his design? T-shirt and shorts.
Great.
And if anyone's ever wondered why that guy's so boring, it's partly to do with the fact like he was introduced as a non-offensive replacement for Brock. But here's the thing, he didn't end up being that.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, after introducing this new character, Tracey, engaging fan reaction, the executives and producers realised something, you know, that fact I mentioned earlier, that no one at all anywhere in the entire world had complained about Brock. Do you know what they did complain about though?
Tracey.
Tracey, yeah.
Wow!
And in fact, they got more complaints about Tracey than they ever got about Brock. And remember, no one complained about Brock, meaning technically infinitely more people were pissed off and offended by the inclusion of Tracey than they were about Brock and he's getting written out of the show.
I can fathom
That's
those
amazing.
figures.
infinitely more people were pissed off at the introduction of this bland, not even vanilla. What's less than vanilla? Because vanilla is at least palatable.
Air flavoured
No,
ice cream.
You know what? Air's nice. I like breathing fresh air. No, what? Sucking a second-hand vape smoke guy. That's what it is. The hardest thing to choke down.
If they brought back Tracey, he'd be a vape smoker now.
Oh, he would, wouldn't he? Tracy is like, he's a key member of Vape Nation, ripping the fattest ass. Fuck that guy. But I love the idea of that. Like, executives who were rightfully nervous about maybe there might be some aspects of his character people might find offensive. So let's just write him out, just to be sure, had no idea how popular the character would be. And after writing him out of the show and replacing him with this new character, they thought, well, everyone's going to love this character. There's nothing to be offended by this character. And that's what offended people, because he's got no characterization. So people are like, no, we love Brock, we love his design, we hate this new guy, get rid of the new guy. And the fact they complained just in droves about him and how shit he was. That's great. As beautiful as that shot was, I like to follow up with what I think is like a glorious chaser. Because in that same interview I mentioned earlier, where a storyboard artist mentioned that they wrote Brock out of the show because people might potentially perceive him as being racist, they also noted quite happily that they included a new female character on the show every other episode as eye candy for all the boys watching at home.
Aren't the majority of them meant to be like 10 or 11?
Yeah. Why weren't more people offended about that?
That eye candy line is a bit...
eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah.
They were worried enough about Brock potentially being perceived as being like racist to somebody in the West that they completely writ him out of the show. And in the same interview, happily we included loads of women with massive tits in this show for all the young boys at home as eye candy in a show that's like aimed at kids and stars kids, including one episode that we mentioned where James has a massive set of tits and then tit shames Misty, who I don't know how old she is in the show, but it's definitely under 15 years old for not having as big a breast as him, a man. I think that's the bow that wraps everything up. So, we had to write Brock out because that might be potentially offensive. But look at these tits! These tits are amazing. It's okay.
On a similar note, while we're talking about Brock, that character, his eyes aren't the thing you'd be offended by.
No, it's the way he treats
women.
Because, it's a running joke throughout the season. He's terminally bad with women. But there are some moments that you can look back on now with that cynical 2018 eye and go, that's not really a good message to impart upon children, is it? Like the one where I think he has a crush on every Officer Jenny, and the joke is that every Officer Jenny looks exactly the same. And Ash asks him, how do you tell the difference between all the Officer Jennys? And he says, this Officer Jenny wears this type of perfume, and this one wears her skirt this way, and this one wears like a badge on the other side. And it's like, what guy takes that much notice of a woman that he notices when her identical twin sister wears a different brand of perfume? We know it's a cartoon. Before you go in the comments and complain, it's just a cartoon, don't get your panties in a bunch. We know that. It's just, when you look at it now as an adult with that hazy, cynical 2018 eye, you look at it and you go, yeah, that probably won't fly on TV today, would it? It's like you might have to tone that down a little bit, which they did in, I think, the late 60s. Obviously, Pokemon's still going on, and I think they did tone down Brock's characterization, or make it worse, but obviously make it more obviously a parody.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what exactly they did, so I've not seen the latest season. So let's not talk any more about that, because the comment section's probably already angry enough with me. So let's just talk about what's your favourite character in the Pokemon series that isn't Brock?
That isn't Brock.
Gary, oh man.
Of course it's Gary.
Gary Oak and his 10-foot long dick. Gary Oak's dick walks into a room 5 minutes before he does. Oh, if you don't mind, mine's red. Red from the original manga and obviously the games. Because I love the idea of a completely silent protagonist. Because he comes back in virtually every mainline Pokemon game, which is unbeatable god character who just stands on top of a mountain, continually making his Pikachu headbutt a wall. It's I love that idea, and I love the short anime they made about Red, where he goes and fights Mewtwo. And the fight between Mewtwo and Charizard just turns into a Dragon Ball Z fight because Charizard just starts doing fucking slash cutters to Mewtwo's asshole. And Mewtwo's like, I didn't expect this. I don't know how to fight this. It's I'm sat here in my cave meditating with all this nigh unlimited psionic power. And this 10-year-old kid comes in like a dickhead on the back of a Lapras, throws an Ultra Ball at my head. And then just a Charizard starts coming up and just starts doing combos on me. And what am I supposed to do about that?
I think right now I'm gonna show you a meme that you may not have seen
What's
about
that?
Gary Oak and his girth. Have you seen it?
I have not seen the meme about Gary Oak's girth.
We'll,
no.
we'll look at it now, and if anyone's still watching, they can find it afterwards.
Okay, cool.
You can't handle his girth.